It's Friday, September 25th, and this is now on H&N.
It's a challenge. I think that's why we're starting now.
Just ahead, we'll take a look at the challenges of distributing a COVID-19 vaccine.
This is definitely probably the most daunting task that we've had to undertake.
Inspection reports show a Hilo veterans home grappling with a COVID-19 outbreak has faced scrutiny in the past.
These are the kind of mistakes that you do see at nursing homes.
Olympic organizers reveal plans for a scaled-down Tokyo Games.
These stories plus, Hawaiian Airlines says it will offer drive-through testing near some airports. That's coming up on This Is Now. Good afternoon on this Aloha Friday. Jonathan and Ashley here coming to you from the H&N Digital Center. We want to get started with this latest coronavirus numbers.
That's right. State Health Department is reporting that 3 more patients with COVID-19 have died, bringing Hawaii's official death toll to 127. There are also 112 new infections today. The county breakdown shows 97 cases are on Oahu, 14 on the Big Island, and 1 on Kauai. The Kauai District Health Office is also independently reporting another new positive case. That brings the Garden Isle's total number of active cases to 2. Officials say the new case is an adult male visitor who is currently in isolation. And new at noon, in a press conference this morning, the Mountain West Commissioner said he was optimistic that UH could be involved in the upcoming but shortened football season.
Hawaii has certainly been talking to their governor and local health authorities, and we've exchanged a lot more information just since this decision was made last night with the president at Hawaii. And certainly they still have some steps to go. There have been discussions about the restrictions in Hawaii now, but I don't want to get the cart ahead of the horse, but certainly we're optimistic that they will be able to resolve some things and that a team can fly the night before a game, play in Hawaii, and return home safely.
We can't wait till October 24th, and obviously we got a lot of work to do, just as everybody else does. But I'm excited to be have the opportunity, and obviously we want to keep our guys safe, and that's first and foremost. And but we're excited about the opportunity to move forward, get an opportunity to compete and compete for a Mountain West championship.
If UH gets the green light, the start date of the 8-game season is set for October 24th. The Rainbow Warrior football team obviously still wants to play, but there are still some obstacles. Travel is the biggest issue since visiting football teams usually bring about 100 people, and since they'd obviously need to skip quarantine, Governor Ige still needs to sign off on a plan for that. The Mountain West says they will pay for all the coronavirus testing required, which provides some financial relief, but a decision still needs to be made on whether fans will be allowed to attend games at Aloha Stadium and whether UH can afford to play ball without the revenue.
Gyms across the city are not allowed to reopen under this current tier unless they take everything outside. Billy V joins us with much more on that.
Thank you very much. We're here at CrossFit Oahu in Kaka'ako. Usually there would be lots of people sweating, working out, making their bodies feel good. But today, it's quiet. That's because this is one of the places that are not allowed to open under the current circumstances. There are all kinds of things that the owners have in mind. I talked to Brian Powers a little bit earlier today, and he told me that they would like to be open. They think that there are things that are different in this workout facility that are different from other gyms or exercise places. That perhaps not all businesses should be put into one lump of different, genre, and maybe that there are separate things that allow them to open up maybe earlier or at least somewhat more than just the current situation, which is right now, nobody is here.
We've been shut down quite a bit, like a lot of small businesses out there. I think 75% of the days since March 18th, we've actually been closed down or not been able to actually do our service, which is teaching group classes.
They have done all the cleaning in the past, they have done all the things needed, but it's hard. No income, and they're still having to pay rent, and they're hoping that they can work with their landlords to hopefully alleviate some of that pressure, some of that angst in this COVID period. So they patiently wait. And in the meantime, the gyms are still empty, and people have to figure out how they're going to work out and do their exercise. From Kaka'ako, I'm Billy V for This Is Now.
As the Yukio Okutsu State Veterans Home in Hilo continues to deal with an outbreak, we've learned before COVID, the nursing home had been fined nearly $30,000 in violations dating back to 2017. Investigative reporter Allison Blair dug into the facility's inspection reports and shares what she found.
Violations range from minor deficiencies to dirty medical equipment and failing to provide residents with adequate supervision. In one case, a veteran known to wander was found 3 miles from the facility. Overall, the Yukio Okutsu Veterans Home is rated below average by the federal government. According to Medicare.gov, its health inspections get just 1 star. The facility has also been cited for abuse, an infamous distinction held by only 3 of the 44 Hawaii care homes listed on the government website. The facility under even more scrutiny now after 26 of its residents died in connection with a coronavirus outbreak. The lieutenant governor taking issue with the facility's response.
They didn't fully separate everyone. And I know, again, it's very difficult, but you have no choice.
Records show problems were documented at the facility long before the outbreak. Since 2017, inspectors have recorded a total of 14 violations at the home. In October of 2018, it was hit with a $20,000 fine after an off-duty nurse's aide found a resident known to wander sitting in his wheelchair outside a store in downtown Hilo, 3 miles from the facility. An investigation revealed records on his whereabouts had been falsified and that no one knew he was missing. Then last fall, the facility was hit with a nearly $9,000 fine after a resident fell off the bed and fractured their hip while staff was replacing a bedsheet. It was determined the worker failed to prevent the fall because of a deficient practice. A few months prior, a certified nurse was placed on administrative leave during an investigation after a resident had to yell for help after being left alone in the shower for 20 minutes. Inspectors also noted last fall staff had failed to clean a patient's medical equipment, a practice noted as putting the resident at risk for infection.
Well, it sounds like they've made some mistakes in the past, and these are the kind of mistakes that you do see at nursing homes. No one is perfect, but some of those are too much.
While Yukio Okutsu does have a history of violations, by no means is it the worst. 6 other care homes in Hawaii have had to pay out more in fines. I reached out to Yukio Okutsu, giving the operator an opportunity to respond to this information, but so far haven't gotten a response. Allison Blair, Hawaii News Now.
This just in, CNN is reporting President Trump intends to choose Amy Barrett as his pick to be the new Supreme Court Justice. CNN is citing multiple senior Republican sources with knowledge of the process. All those sources caution that until it is announced by President Trump, there is always the possibility that Trump makes a last-minute change. He is scheduled to make that announcement on Saturday afternoon. With all the attention going towards getting a safe and effective vaccine, that's really only the first step. The next big hurdle would be getting that vaccine distributed across the country. Stephanie Gausk has more on how that could happen.
On a street corner in Cambridge, Massachusetts, Acme Dry Ice is hotter than ever.
Acme Ice, may I help you? We've gotten calls as far as California, Seattle, Chicago, Texas, Arkansas.
People are calling you here.
People are calling here because,
to get dry ice across the country?
Yeah, because there's no product there.
Mark Savinor says 75% of his business is from vaccine developers.
And they're just in phase 3 trials right now. This isn't even actual production yet.
Right. I mean, this hasn't even hit yet.
When approval comes, millions of doses will have to be transported and stored around the country. UPS has built freezer farms in Louisville, Kentucky, and overseas in the Netherlands. At Mass General Hospital in Boston, the chief pharmacist is getting ready for the first shipments.
This is what we use for just our daily operation.
Like a flu vaccine would be in here.
Flu vaccine.
But Pfizer's vaccine for COVID, which is one of the most likely to be approved early on, has to be kept as low as -80 degrees Celsius.
-80 degrees Celsius is colder than the Arctic.
Yep, it is. This is not something you sort of go to Lowe's and Home Depot to buy.
And it's not just one vaccine in the pipeline.
How difficult is that? You don't know what the vaccine's going to be. It could be the one that's stored at -80, the one that's stored at -20, and yet you've got to be prepared for all of it.
It's a challenge. I mean, I think that's why we're starting now.
The CDC asked states to have vaccination plans ready by November.
This is definitely probably the most daunting task that we've had to undertake in terms of the sheer number of people that we're going to have to get vaccinated.
There will be a limited supply at first, likely going to healthcare workers and high-risk groups. The vaccinations will need to be tracked. Some require 2 doses spaced weeks apart. And then there is the question of where people should go to get it done safely during a pandemic.
And those include drive-thrus at fire stations, car washes, ice houses. It also includes scheduling patients at 5, 10, and 15-minute intervals.
Each step in the distribution process equally critical.
I mean, we're playing a big part of the COVID vaccine, and it feels good to be part of it.
Because delivering the vaccine will be just as important as developing it. Stephanie Gosk, NBC News, Cambridge, Massachusetts.
A day after United Airlines announced it would offer coronavirus testing for passengers traveling from San Francisco to Hawaii, Hawaiian Airlines said it will also provide its own testing program near certain airports. Hawaiian said it will be providing drive-through testing at labs near Los Angeles and San Francisco international airports. The testing gives travelers the option of paying $90 for results within 36 hours or $150 for same-day results. The airline said the program will be available by October 15th, when Hawaii's pre-travel testing program goes into effect. And as Hawaiian faces layoffs and downsizing due to the pandemic, about 100 flight attendants have chosen early retirement. One has a long career with some historic moments. Mahealani Richardson has her story.
After 51 years with Hawaiian Airlines, flight attendant Audrey Kwok's career officially closes at the end of September. Due to the pandemic, her last flight was actually in March.
We didn't have closure. We didn't get to say goodbye to each other.
When she signed on in 1969, most flight attendants only worked a couple years, but the women's movement opened the door for lifetime careers. Her memories and all the international cities she visited are just as colorful as her uniforms.
Many of us have had just a great run. We've been able to have pretty much sleepovers on layovers, and we've gone shopping, and we've seen all kinds of sights, and it was time to let somebody else do it.
Kwok was on that Hawaiian Airlines flight that helped save the Hokulea in 1978. Capsized at sea, Eddie Aikau was lost. After spotting a distress flare and then being ordered to keep flying, the pilot told her to look out the window.
It was just so black. And I said, there's nothing there. And when I stared at it, it was pulsating. And so I was so relieved. I said, I see it. It's on the left corner of this window.
One memorable flight was to Athens during Desert Storm in 1991.
We saw tanks right at the entrance to the airport, and we had never seen anything like that.
With no opportunity to say goodbye to her colleagues in person, we gave this 71-year-old dedicated and loyal lady a chance to say aloha.
I will miss you, and I'm hoping that you'll face the challenges up ahead with a lot of courage, wisdom, and most of all, a lot of good luck.
Wow, so sweet.
I know.
Right?
What a great career.
I know. And speaking of that career, those uniforms are amazing, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we thought this would be a good opportunity to hop into our little time machine via Google image search and take a look at some of the Hawaiian uniforms through the ages. Up first, let's go to the 1950s.
All right, the 1950s, flight attendants had the option to skip the military cap, which was part of the 1940s uniform, and adorn their hair with fresh flowers. Now, the flower power uniforms featured an A-line dress in a retro print. The uniform also included 2 different sleeve options, sleeveless or short split sleeves. fresh plumeria hairpieces, and a yellow leather purse. Now, several notable designers participated in the creation of this uniform.
Let's go now from the 1960s flower power to the 1970s. Look at those psychedelic colors. These are my favorite, I have to say.
Yeah.
I would rock that Aloha shirt so much. I love it. So this was the 1970s uniforms, and then we'll move on from there to the 1980s. Look at these guys having fun there. The airline launched these as part of their 60th anniversary in the 80s.
That's right, and the 1990s uniform, which was inspired by the traditional Hawaiian quilt. The design included indigenous Hawaiian plants and flowers and pualani on the center of the chest.
Very cool.
That brings us to the current uniform. In 2016, the airline partnered with Hawaii designers Sig Zane, and this is what you see now when you fly with Hawaiian.
I would also wear that Aloha shirt.
Yeah, that's a really nice one too.
And just a really quick note regarding that veterans home in Hilo story that we brought you a little bit ago. Allison Blair, the investigative reporter, did that story, just passed me a note and said the nursing home operator has passed along to her that they say state and federal infections control surveys were conducted this past June and found no deficiencies at all. So you can read all about that again on our H&N digital platforms. We posted the story there with that update. Let's take you outside now. Look at that beautiful Aloha Friday. Guy Hoggy's here to tell us what our weekend's gonna look like.
How's it on this Friday? There's some little bit of moisture up to the north of us, but we're not going to see much in the way of rainfall. Significant rainfall not expected until maybe Wednesday or Thursday, but even that is an uncertainty. So keep your fingers crossed because we could use more rain. And we could use those trade winds to hang on, but they won't be. They'll be breezy today, but by tomorrow they'll lighten up significantly, and that means humidity levels will be rising. So for today, it's going to be a nice day with those breezy winds. It's going to feel comfortable, except of course for the Kona side of the Big Island. They'll have light winds there, so it's going to be especially humid. And with all the sunshine, temperatures running to about 90 degrees for some leeward spots. Now the surface is expected to pick up on the south shore and the west shore from a nice pulse. Not expected until later in the day though. Right now it's still slow and going. And that north shore swell, which peaked yesterday, is on the way down. But we still should have some overhead sets on the north shore. So we're in for a very nice weekend, but lighter winds due in tomorrow. Variable winds taking over on Monday. That's a long stretch of very hot, humid weather. Keep it here on Hawaii News Now. We'll have all your severe weather updates.
This next story certainly has the internet buzzing today. Olympic officials have revealed plans for coronavirus safeguards for the upcoming Summer Games next year in Japan. Will Ripley has all those details for us.
For months now, Japan's Olympic Stadium has been sitting empty. Some people wondering if it'll ever see the opening and closing ceremonies, if it will be safe to bring in athletes and spectators from all over the world if there's not a vaccine for COVID-19. Now Japanese officials are saying, with or without a vaccine, they will hold the games next summer, and they're releasing more information about their plans to do so safely. Part of that involves fewer people, frankly. That means cutting the size of the delegations from each country by 10 to 15%, and canceling some events that are traditional but not necessary, like the opening ceremony for the International Olympic Committee, which is now no longer taking place. In terms of the big opening and closing ceremonies, some of these special effects might be dialed back to save on expenses, and also they're going to be reducing the number of spectator seats by 30%. So you won't necessarily see an empty stadium, but you won't see as many people in the crowds as there has been in previous years, which raises the question, what happens to all the people who bought tickets? As for the athletes who are coming into Japan, how do they stay safe? Well, it's not really practical to expect the athletes to go up through a mandatory 2-week quarantine. Their schedule just doesn't allow that. So instead of quarantine, the condition for the athletes coming in is that they have to take a coronavirus test at least 5 times within 72 hours. That means they're tested before departure, upon arrival at the airport, when arriving at the training camp location and Olympic Village, and during the duration of their stay at the training camp in the Olympic Village, before and during the games. Athletes' movements, they could also be monitored by their governing organizations and even through the use of a mobile app. And athletes might be required to submit and abide by a schedule and a plan of action upon arrival. The Olympics will go on, the Japanese say, and they'll try to make them look like normal. But of course, this is a new reality and a new day, and they're trying to do everything they can to keep people safe.
All right, time for some good news. And speaking of Tokyo, Tokyo Disneyland is unveiling a new attraction today based on the classic movie Beauty and the Beast. The installation occupies about 11 acres of the park. The project took about 3 years to complete. Now, because of the pandemic, those who wish to visit the new attraction are required to apply for a time slot via the park's official app. Guests will also have to follow social distancing rules, and the area will be open to the public next week.
Did you see their take on the teacup ride there?
Yeah, I know.
The little chip ride? That's so
very
cute.
cute.
All right, guys, 80s kids, listen up.
Hey.
This story's for you. That's because General Mills is bringing back some classic 80s cereals. Yeah, that was one of my favorite memories, sitting at home Saturday morning, watching those cartoons,
yes.
scarfing them down. The flavors that they're bringing back, their recipes are Cocoa Puffs, Cookie Crisp, Trix, Golden Grams are permanently returning to their 80s version. The company says Cocoa Puffs will deliver more chocolate taste. Cookie Crisp, my fave, will bring back more chocolate chips. Yes! And Trix is returning to those fruity shapes we remember, and Golden Grams is bringing back honey. Why did it go away? So check out those on your store shelves very soon.
What does 80s recipes mean? Like more sugar before people started getting healthy?
I mean, is it all corn syrup? I don't know. Maybe I'll have to read the ingredients thing. Really don't know, honestly.
And if you were a fan of the 1991 movie Father of the Bride, Netflix is inviting you to a family reunion. So the streaming service is bringing together the cast for a family video call, and it's actually airing on Netflix's YouTube and Facebook pages right now. Now, the details were pretty limited, like which stars would be part of it, but the reunion will help raise money for the World Central Kitchen, which helps provide meals in times of crisis.
Very cool. Excited for that. Well, you know what? Employees of all kinds have gone above and beyond during this pandemic, but many say they aren't getting the thanks that they might expect. Laura Podesta has a story, pretty interesting here, about how important those thank yous really are.
She gets me.
After completing a recent work project, Lexi Fields got this "You're awesome" meme from her manager. The small gesture meant the world.
It really doesn't take a lot of effort to do something like that, but it does mean something to us all. We do feel like a family on this team.
But it seems her boss's expression of thankfulness is not the norm. A recent survey of 500 Americans found nearly half had not received a thank you from their boss during the pandemic. The company WorkHuman conducted the study. Eric Mosley is the CEO.
That's a huge number. Yeah, it's quite unbelievable. If you think about it in today's world, with all that's going on, we've asked tens of millions of people to work from home. And sometimes under duress, they don't have ideal circumstances. It's a very stressful time.
On Twitter, worker complaints run rampant.
Do you feel appreciated?
I feel like things have changed. I feel like society's kind of forgotten about what we're in, despite having to wear masks, social distance anywhere and everywhere that they go.
EMT Carl Robinson says he got lots of thanks for being a frontline worker at the beginning of the pandemic, but not lately.
Do you think if the praise was more consistent, praise from society and from your patients, you would be motivated to do an even better job?
I do.
And others agree. In the WorkHuman study, 64% of people say receiving a thank you during the pandemic inspired them to work even harder. Laura Podesta, CBS News, New York.
And in an effort to give more thanks, we here at This Is Now wanted to start first by thanking our general manager, Katie Pickman. She keeps us well fed. She makes sure we have all the PPE we need to be safe here at work. We also want to say thank you to our security guard, Butch, who sits out front. He's so friendly, and he's just a nice presence to be around when you walk in the morning.
And thanks to our parking lot attendants and all our interns. You guys, happy Aloha Friday.